Hello girls, I hope you all are doing good. So today in this video we will be starting off your module 2 with module 2, which is known as managerial functions. Okay, under this you will be studying a lot of concepts. So your module 2 under business dynamics and entrepreneurship is managerial functions. Okay, to begin with, firstly you will have your introduction to planning. Now as we looked into the earlier chapter, also in your first chapter we studied about what is planning. Planning, as we all know, it is the first step in any organization, first step to carry out any activity, right? Even if you have to achieve your objectives, even if you have to achieve your goals or anything, planning is the first step. It is the beginning process of the management. Okay, so in order to carry out everything effectively, in order to achieve all your goals and objectives, planning is a very important aspect. Okay, so planning is very important. Okay, now let's look into what is the meaning of planning. Meaning of planning is basically, planning means a predetermined course of action. Okay, predetermined course of action to achieve a specified aim or goal. It is concerned with deciding in advance what is to be done, when and how and whom it is to be done. Okay, so basically through planning, it is a predetermined course of action. You are deciding everything in prior. Okay, by setting a particular goal and objective. Suppose you've set a goal and objective, you are determining making sure you have a predetermined course of action wherein you have the right people to do the right job. Suppose you have 4 members in a team. One person is one person, you will say you do the introduction, second person can do the objectives, third person, you'll divide your topics accordingly, right? So this is how planning is done. One particular person will plan and everything will be coordinated and done in a stepwise manner. So this is the meaning of planning. It is a predetermined course of action to achieve a specified aim or goal. It is concerned with deciding in advance what is to be done, when, where and how and by whom it is to be done. Okay, now next is your definition of planning. Now definition of planning, I would recommend you all to go with whichever definition is comfortable and easy for you all to remember. Okay, now, according to Theo Hyman, planning is deciding in advance. Okay, planning means you are deciding in advance as to what is to be done. When a manager plans, he projects a course of action for the future, attempting to achieve a consistent, coordinated structured operations aimed at the desired results. Okay, basically, it says that you are deciding in advance as to how you need to carry out and what is to be done. Okay, how you need to carry out the action and what is to be done, by whom it is to be done, and what is your future course of action, and how various things need to be coordinated, and how you need to achieve your desired results. Okay, now next, according to Lewis A. Allen, planning involves the development of forecast, objectives, policies, programs, procedures, schedules and budgets. Okay, now, according to Kunz and O. Daniel, planning is deciding in advance. Okay, planning is deciding in advance what to do, how to do, when to do, and who is to do it. Okay, planning bridges gap from where we are to where we want to go. Okay, from where we are at the moment, where are we, and where we want to go in order to achieve the goals. It makes it possible for things to occur which would not otherwise happen. Now, planning, without planning, you cannot achieve your objectives, and you do not know how you need to go about in order to achieve your goals and objectives, right? So through planning, it will become everything can be simplified effectively, and you will know as to how you need to achieve your goals and objectives. Now next, you have your concept of planning. Now what is this concept of planning? Planning, as we all know, it is you're deciding in advance as to what needs to be done, right? Now it involves a selection of objectives. Okay, objectives, you'll have your functions, you'll have your procedures. Okay, you'll have your programs and various alternatives in order to achieve your objective. Now while you are planning, you'll have various number of alternatives. You'll have A, B, C, D. Now you will obviously choose the best alternative in order to see which is the best way to achieve your objective, and which is less time consuming, and also in which everyone are given equal opportunity. Okay, now planning is basically a blueprint for an action. Okay, it is basically planning is a mental process, okay, which requires our intellectual faculties, imagination. Now basically you will have employees in your organization. Now these employees in an organization should plan effectively in order to see you're achieving your desired result. Okay, and you should also be able to guide your employees from time to time to achieve those particular objectives, and make sure what method you need to use and how you need to go about planning of a particular thing to achieve an objective. Now next, you have a nature of planning. In nature of planning, you have various points you have 8 points which you need to keep in mind. Okay, so firstly, it is a future orientation. Now when you talk about planning, you all know you're planning for the future, right? You're planning for the future because at present you know how you need to go about doing things, but planning is something which is done for the future. So planning is always future oriented. It is a process which looks ahead or think ahead and making provisions to tackle future event. Okay, basically you're planning in order to tackle your future events. Okay, now while you're planning for future events, you should also keep your past in mind. Okay, you should also keep in mind the past activities, in case if there is any activity in the past which was very similar, which has taken place. Okay, can you take some necessary actions or necessary ideas from those particular events which have occurred in the past? So you can also take your past activities also into consideration. Okay, now next one is information based. Now why is it an information based? See, when you are planning is something you cannot do without taking necessary information. Suppose if you want to go out with your friends, okay, and you have various alternatives, you can go out to various places, but you and your friends will give necessary suggestions. No, you will decide on where you want to go, how you want to go, and all of that. So that is nothing but you're taking necessary information, right? Now why do you want information? You are taking information because you want your planning to be very effective. You do not want anything to go wrong in your plan, right? So you will take your information about past, present and future to make sure your planning is really good and effective. Now your managers will be talking from an organization perspective, your managers, when you're giving necessary information, your managers will evaluate that particular information to see whether this particular information will be helpful in planning or not. Okay, now next one, you have rationality. Now rationality is basically based on reasons rather than emotions. Okay, rationality is completely reasons rather than emotions. Okay, now that is why planning is very effective. Okay, and it is a very managerial function. Okay, it is done by the manager. Now managers should be very rational. They should not bring in their emotions into consideration, and they should make decisions which are completely based on information and future orientation. Okay, now next one is you have formal and informal nature. Formal and informal nature is basically, normally planning is formal, okay, and informal in nature. It can be either formal or informal in nature. Now formal planning is only done through investigation, analysis of various factors. As I told you all earlier also, factors means something which is known as internal factors and external factors as to what are these particular things which are affecting the organization. Okay, formal planning is only done through investigation and analysis for various factors. Now, basically, formal planning will be in a stepwise procedure to achieve a particular desired goals. Okay. Now, whereas informal planning is done by managers and communicated them through word of mouth. Basically, you will carry out a particular planning and you will just go and communicate it by the word of mouth. You will not keep any records or you will not maintain anything. Whereas formal planning is very stepwise and it is very it is a kind of planning which is easily understood by people. But if what happens in informal planning is basically you tend to miss out on certain information, and informal planning is also considered as a trial and error process. You're not sure if you'll be able to achieve a desired result because not everyone will be aware of whatever steps you're carrying out, and plus it is word of mouth. Okay, nothing will be given to you in a written manner and nothing will be explained to you very clearly. Okay. Now, planning is also an intellectual process. Now, intellectual process is basically, it is a continuous process. Okay, planning will not stop only at one stage. Planning is a continuous process. Okay, you need to have the ability to think logically and understand things. Okay, only if you are able to generate ideas, if you're able to think logically, okay, if you're able to identify what are the opportunities and how you're carrying out and how you are taking into consideration necessary information, based on that your planning will be very effective. Okay, planning is a continuous and an intellectual process. Okay, how you choose the right course of action and who is the person who is executing that particular plan is also very important. Now next point is pragmatic action orientation. Now pragmatic action orientation is, even if planning is an intellectual process, okay, it needs to be practical. Now suppose we plan something, okay, now just planning is not important. You need to put that plan into action also to see if that particular plan will work or not. Okay, and it should also be flexible and sensible way. Now suppose if you want to make a change in that particular plan, your plan should be very flexible. Okay, your plan should be very flexible and you should be able to make changes easily. And also before implementing the particular plan, you need to make sure that the plan is effective and this particular plan will be able to achieve the desired results or not. Okay. Now, next a point is decision making. Now, planning is very important when it comes to decision making, because decision making is something wherein you are deciding over things. Okay, so planning involves decision making and also solving of various problems. Okay, solving of various problems. It also involves identification of issues. Issues are nothing but problems, and how those particular problems needs to be addressed, or how those problems need to be solved by collecting of relevant information, facts, and most appropriate alternative course of action. Okay, now decisions are based on organizational policies. Now, whatever decision is made by the organization, they are based on organization policies, programs, strategies, objectives, other plans and procedure. It also involves allocation, mobilization, and commitment of resources. Okay, basically your planning also involves allocation, mobilization, and commitment of resources. Okay, now planning has to be done keeping in mind what are the resources which are available by the organization, whether this particular organization has necessary information and necessary resources, and whether you will be able to carry out this particular planning and in order to achieve the objectives or not. You have to see this. Okay, now next is dynamism. Okay, now what is dynamism is basically it is your environment, your organization environment is a very dynamic environment. Okay, your overall environment is a very dynamic environment. Now, what is dynamic means with something which is continuously changing. Okay, and it is always your organization is always affected by the internal and external factors. Okay, external factors or changes in the environment. So planning is a dynamic process. Now you should you already looked into the previous point, right, wherein planning needs to be very flexible. Now, this is the only reason planning needs to be flexible, because there are continuous changes in the internal and external environment. So planning, if it is flexible, you can make necessary changes based on whatever whatever changes that are coming. Okay, in order to, why are you doing this? Because your planning needs to be flexible in order to avoid any sorts of losses. Okay, any sorts of losses. Then also to make sure that your organization has a greater market share, and also you're able to achieve your objectives and make proper utilization of resources, opportunities, and also to solve your problems of the organization. This is why nature of planning is very important. Okay, this is a very important topic. Now, next you have your characteristics of planning. Now, under your characteristics of planning, you have various your characteristics of planning is summarized as follows. Your first planning characteristic is primary function. Now, why is it a primary function? Now, primary means it is the beginning, right? Primary means beginning. So now you will know primary function means planning is a primary function. It is the first and the most important process of the management. It is the beginning of the management process. Okay, now even if you want to carry out any activity, the manager should first plan. Before he can organize staff, direct and control, he must first plan, and planning sets all others into action. Then he need to make sure that whatever planning is done, you need to put this particular plan into action to see whether you are achieving desired objective results or not. Okay, now planning also it is a primary requisite to managerial functions. Okay, now, why do you need planning? Firstly, to organize, staffing, directing, motivating, coordinating, communicating, and controlling. For all of these functions, first planning is very important if you have to go about these particular functions. Okay, so planning is the first primary function. Now, next is planning is an intellectual process. Planning is an intellectual process because it is a continuous process and it is a mental process. Okay, you need to think from your mind. Okay, and it requires a lot of information and judgment. Okay. Now, a good plan is depending on a good collection of study or information. Whatever information you collect, based on that you will derive a particular plan, and your planning completely depends on how good and effective your information is. Okay, and also how it is your ability and intelligence of the management. Okay, based on the intellectual process, according to Coons and O'Daniel, planning is an intellectual process which involves a mental exercise. Okay, foreseeing future developments, making forecast and determination of the best course of action. So, planning based on the intellectual process, they say that it is a mental process. According to Coons and O'Donnell, they are saying that planning is a intellectual process which is a mental